cruel settlers were hanging a girl when a Cherokee warrior came to her rescue and changed everything. The sun hung low over the alien frontier settlement of Redstone Colony, casting long orange shadows over the dusty ground. The settlers were restless. Their colony, built on the edge of a wild, untamed world, had always been harsh, but today the tension was different. Something had gone wrong. Food stores had been ruined, and the settlers were angry. They needed someone to blame. Amaya, a young woman of the colony, walked quietly along the rough wooden path toward the center of town. Her hands were bound, and her eyes darted nervously at the crowd forming around the makeshift gallows. The settlers' faces were twisted in anger, their voices rising in a chaotic chant. She had always been careful, hard-working, and kind. She had never caused trouble. But now they accused her of sabotage. "Thief! Saboteur!" the crowd shouted. "She ruined our food. She must pay." Amaya's heart pounded like a drum. Her mind raced, searching for a way out. She knew that pleading would do nothing. The settlers were not listening to reason. They were listening to fear and anger. She glanced at the gallows. A thick rope hung from a crude wooden frame, swaying slightly in the hot breeze. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her panic under control. Just as the executioner began to tighten the ropes around her wrists, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. It was the kind of silence that makes the heart skip a beat. Heads turned, eyes narrowing toward the edge of the settlement. A figure emerged from the dust and shadows. He moved with calm confidence, his steps deliberate and unhurried. His presence alone made the settlers hesitate. He was tall, with sharp features, dark eyes that seemed to see everything, and a calm, steady voice. He wore a cloak made from the patterned hides of alien creatures, blending traditional Cherokee designs with practical frontier wear. "I am Dakota," he said, his voice calm but firm, "and I will not allow this injustice." The settlers murmured among themselves, uncertain. None of them had seen Dakota before, but there was something about him that made them pause. It was not the cloak nor the weapons at his belt. It was the way he carried himself, the way his gaze met theirs without fear. Amaya's heart leaped. She had heard whispers of the Cherokee warriors who had adapted to life on these new worlds. Brave, skilled, and clever, they were said to be unstoppable when defending the innocent. But she had never thought she would see one herself. Not here, not now, not for her. The executioner raised his hand, signaling to the crowd, but Dakota stepped forward, placing a single hand on the rope. His grip was light, but the settlers felt the weight of his presence. "This is not justice," Dakota said. "This is fear, and fear destroys more than it protects." A man in the crowd shouted, "Who are you to stop us? This is our settlement." Dakota's eyes narrowed. He moved swiftly, not recklessly, but with precision. In one motion, he pulled a hidden lever beneath the gallows platform. The rope snapped against the beam with a loud crack, startling the crowd. Amaya stumbled forward, catching herself against the wooden post, gasping in surprise. "Run!" Dakota said softly, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Now!" Amaya did not hesitate. She sprinted, her feet barely touching the rough wooden ground. The settlers shouted after her, but Dakota was already moving. He did not chase. Instead, he created distractions, tripping barrels, throwing sand into the eyes of the first few who tried to follow, using clever misdirection that made the settlers collide with each other in confusion. They were not ready for someone like him, someone who was calm in the face of chaos, who knew how to use their anger against them. Amaya ran past the market stalls and into the narrow alleys between the colony's buildings. Dust swirled around her legs, stinging her eyes. Her lungs burned, but she did not stop. She had never run like this before, not even in the wild games she played as a child. Fear sharpened her senses, making every step count. Behind her, she could hear the settlers' shouts fading. Dakota's presence was like a shield around her, keeping the mob at bay without harming them. He believed in human life, even the cruel ones. That belief gave her courage. Finally, she reached the edge of the settlement, where the alien forest began. The trees were tall with twisting, luminescent branches that glowed faintly in the evening light. Strange creatures scuttled between the roots, their eyes reflecting curiosity more than threat. Dakota emerged from the shadows behind her. "You're safe for now," he said. "But we cannot stay here. They will not forgive this embarrassment easily." Amaya turned to him, her chest heaving. "Who are you?" she asked, still catching her breath.
"A friend," he replied.
"A protector of those who cannot protect themselves." She studied him, trying to read the calm strength in his face. It was unlike anything she had ever seen in the settlers. He did not wield power through fear or anger. He wielded it through skill, knowledge, and courage. "We must move," he said. "Follow me. Keep quiet and do exactly as I say." They moved together into the forest. The alien world was alive around them. Strange plants curled and twisted like living sculptures. Brightly colored insects zipped through the air, and distant calls of creatures echoed in the thickening darkness. Dakota led them along paths he alone knew, paths that seemed invisible to ordinary eyes. As they moved deeper into the forest, Amaya began to relax slightly. She realized that the universe was bigger than the small, cruel settlement she had known. Out here, in the wild and untamed world, humans could survive, but only if they were smart, brave, and resourceful. Dakota glanced at her. "You have courage," he said. "It is rare. Most would have given up before reaching this point." I don't know what I did to deserve this," Amaya admitted. "I was just trying to survive," Dakota replied. "The universe does not reward innocence or luck alone. It rewards those who act, even when the odds are against them. Humans have always been good at that. It is our greatest strength." Amaya felt a spark of hope. For the first time in her life, she felt that she could matter in this world, that she could fight, and that someone powerful would stand beside her. The forest grew darker as night approached. Dakota led her to a small clearing where a gentle stream flowed, reflecting the alien stars above. They paused, taking a moment to rest. Amaya drank from the stream, savoring the cool, clean water. Dakota crouched beside her, his eyes scanning the shadows. "The settlers will send others," he warned. "We must stay ahead of them. They are clever in their own way, but not clever enough." Amaya nodded, determination building within her. "I will do whatever it takes," she said. "I don't want anyone else to go through what I just experienced." "That is good," Dakota said. "Courage grows when we protect others, not just ourselves. That is the difference between fear and strength." They settled beside the stream for the night, keeping watch. Amaya could hear the distant sounds of the settlement, the angry shouts, the pounding of boots on wooden planks. But out here, in the wild, she felt alive in a way she had never felt before. She had escaped death, and she had met someone who taught her that humans could rise above cruelty. As she drifted into a light sleep, She dreamed not of the gallows, but of the forest, the strange glowing trees, the rushing water, and the promise of survival. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges, but she also knew that with Dakota by her side, she could face them. And in the distance, hidden in the shadows, the settlers watched, plotting their next move. But Amaya no longer feared them. For the first time, she felt the quiet power of hope, courage, and the human spirit. The alien forest was alive with soft whispers and strange lights. Trees with twisted, glowing branches stretched high above, their leaves shimmering like tiny stars. Amaya moved carefully beside Dakota, her body tense but alert. Every sound, a rustling leaf, the snap of a branch, or the soft splash of water, made her heart jump. "They are following us," Dakota said quietly, his dark eyes scanning the forest. "The settlers will not let you go easily." Amaya swallowed hard. How do you know?" "They are predictable," he replied. "Fear and anger guide them. They cannot think beyond the moment. That is why they are dangerous, but also why we can outsmart them." Amaya had never felt more alive. Her hands, once trembling in fear, now gripped a sturdy branch she had pulled from the ground. She had learned quickly that on this alien world, even ordinary objects could become tools. She followed Dakota's lead, watching how he moved silently, almost like the forest itself obeyed him. As they ventured deeper, Dakota paused. "We need to cross the Black Creek. The settlers might try to cut us off. Stay close and watch your footing." The creek was wide and fast-moving, its dark waters churning over rocks that glowed faintly under the alien moonlight. Amaya's stomach clenched. She had never crossed anything like this before. "Step carefully," Dakota instructed. "Every movement counts. If you fall, they will find you." Amaya nodded, her hands gripping a large rock for balance. She stepped onto the first stone. It wobbled under her weight, but she held on, forcing herself to focus only on the next step. Dakota moved beside her effortlessly, each step measured and sure. Halfway across, a shout rang from behind. The settlers had arrived, their crude weapons raised. "Stop them! Don't let them escape!" Amaya froze for a split second. Dakota's eyes narrowed. "Move!" he commanded. She leaped to the next stone, her heart pounding. Behind them, settlers tried to chase, but the uneven stones and fast current slowed them. Dakota used a long, curved stick to push a loose boulder into the creek, sending water splashing over the first group. The settlers screamed and scrambled, losing their balance. Amaya's fear began to change into something else: excitement, determination. She realized she was learning quickly. With every step, she understood the rhythm of the forest, the sound of water, the way shadows moved. Humans, she thought, were good at adapting. That was why Dakota had said courage was not enough. Skill and thinking mattered too. They reached the other side safely, drenched but alive. Dakota glanced back, noting the frustrated settlers trying to regain their balance in the creek. "They will try another way," he said. "We cannot stop now." Amaya shivered both from cold and anticipation. "Where will we go?" she asked. "First, we rest," Dakota said. "Then, we move under the cover of darkness. There is a place where we can hide, a safe spot the settlers do not know about." They moved silently through the dense undergrowth. The forest seemed to swallow their presence, the strange glow of plants and insects creating a natural camouflage. Dakota's movements were graceful, controlled, and precise. Amaya tried to imitate him, learning quickly how to use her surroundings. She felt a thrill of pride. For the first time, she was not just running. She was participating. She was becoming capable. After several hours, they arrived at a small hollow surrounded by tall, alien ferns. The air smelled fresh and sweet, a stark contrast to the dusty, harsh settlement they had left behind. Dakota knelt beside a shallow pool of water, inspecting it carefully. "This will do for now," he said. "Drink, rest, and observe. We must be ready for anything." Amaya knelt beside him, drinking the cool water and wiping mud from her face. "Dakota, why are you helping me?" she asked softly. He looked at her, his expression unreadable, but gentle. "Because humans are worth saving," he said. "Because courage and intelligence must be protected. Because cruelty does not define us. You could have died today, and that would have been a loss to the world. But now, you live, and that matters." Amaya's chest swelled with a new feeling, pride mixed with awe. She had always felt small, powerless, but now she felt important. She realized that human life, human skill, and human courage were powerful, especially when used together. Night deepened and the forest became even more alien. Strange, luminescent plants glowed softly, casting eerie but beautiful shadows. The sounds of creatures echoed around them, some friendly, some possibly dangerous. Amaya felt her senses sharpening. Every rustle, every shadow, every unfamiliar sound became something to notice, to use. "They are still looking for you," Dakota said, his voice calm but firm. "We cannot stay here long." Amaya nodded. She had already begun thinking of ways to move silently, to hide, to observe without being seen. Humans could be clever, she realized. Even ordinary humans could learn quickly. That was part of what made them strong. Suddenly, a rustling noise came from behind a dense clump of glowing ferns. Amaya froze, but Dakota's hand gently touched her shoulder. "Wait," he whispered. A small alien creature, no bigger than a rabbit but with 4 glowing eyes, emerged. It stared at them curiously, then scampered away. Amaya laughed softly. The tension eased for a moment, but Dakota remained vigilant. "Even small things can be dangerous," he said. "Never let your guard down completely." Hours passed as they rested. Amaya learned from Dakota how to read the forest, the direction of winds, the behavior of creatures, even the patterns of shadows that could reveal movement. Every lesson was practical, and she absorbed them like a sponge. Humans were adaptable, she realized, and when taught by someone wise, they could survive anything. Finally, Dakota spoke again.
"We move at first light. There is a high ridge east of here."
"From there we can see the settlement and plan our next step. The settlers are clever, but we are cleverer." Amaya felt her heart race with anticipation. She was no longer just a victim. She was part of a plan, part of a strategy. Dakota's confidence had rubbed off on her. When dawn broke, they moved carefully through the forest. The trees glowed faintly in the soft light, and the air was filled with the songs of alien birds. Amaya's muscles ached, but she felt stronger, sharper, ready for anything. As they climbed the ridge, they could see the settlement in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys and tiny figures moved below. Dakota crouched beside her, pointing out the settlers who were searching the perimeter. "They have not given up," he said, "but they are predictable. They will follow the easiest path, not the cleverest. We must stay hidden and think ahead." Amaya felt a thrill of excitement. Humans could survive, even against numbers and anger, if they used their minds. She understood now why Dakota had come for her. Humans were clever, resilient, and courageous, traits that could not be measured by brute strength alone. Suddenly, a shout rang from below. One of the settlers had spotted something. Perhaps a shadow, perhaps movement. They were closer than she thought. Dakota moved swiftly, pulling Amaya down behind a large rock. He whispered instructions, guiding her through every detail. Amaya followed without hesitation. She felt her heart pound, but it was no longer fear. It was anticipation, excitement, and purpose. Humans had always survived against odds, she realized. They adapted, learned, and grew stronger through challenges. That was why Dakota had saved her, and why she would survive the trials ahead. Hours later, the settlers retreated, frustrated and confused. Dakota allowed Amaya to breathe. "You are learning fast," he said. That is how humans survive, not by waiting for luck, but by acting, thinking, and adapting. Amaya smiled, feeling a warmth she had never known. She was no longer helpless. She had courage, skill, and a teacher who believed in her. She understood now that humans, even ordinary ones, could face danger, adapt, and triumph. And as they rested on the ridge, watching the settlement below, Amaya felt a spark of hope. The settlers had not won. She was alive. She had learned. And she would continue to fight, to survive, and to grow. The forest whispered around them, alive and mysterious, and Amaya knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she also knew that with Dakota beside her, she could face anything. Humans had survived worse, adapted faster, and triumphed through courage and intelligence. And this was just the beginning. The ridge overlooked the alien forest like a quiet guardian. Below, the settlement of Redstone Colony lay in uneasy chaos. Smoke curled from the chimneys, and small figures moved between buildings, searching, shouting, and gesturing. Dakota crouched beside Amaya, his eyes sharp, scanning every movement. "See them?" he whispered. "They are searching for the easiest paths. They will not consider clever ones. That is our advantage." Amaya nodded. She had learned to see patterns in chaos. She could spot the settlers' predictable behavior, their blind spots, and the mistakes their anger caused. She felt a thrill of power. For the first time, she was not simply running. She was planning, thinking, and acting.
"We need to move at first light," Dakota continued.
"We cannot stay here forever, but for now, watch and learn." They waited through the night, the alien forest alive around them. Luminescent insects hovered in the air, and strange sounds echoed through the trees. Amaya felt herself becoming part of this world, her senses attuned to its rhythms. The forest was dangerous, yes, but it also offered protection. Humans, she realized, survived by understanding their surroundings, by learning quickly and adapting. When dawn came, the forest glowed with soft light. Dakota led Amaya down the ridge carefully, using hidden paths and natural cover. Every step was deliberate. Amaya followed, her heart racing, yet her mind focused. They reached a narrow canyon, its walls covered with twisting alien vines. Dakota stopped. "This path is risky," he said. "But it will put us behind the settlement where they cannot follow easily. Pay attention and follow exactly." Amaya moved cautiously. The canyon floor was uneven, with rocks that shifted under her weight. The vines glowed faintly, and the shadows they cast made it difficult to see. But she remembered Dakota's lessons. Watch the movement of the shadows, listen to the smallest sound, and anticipate danger before it arrives. Suddenly, a noise echoed from above, a shout, harsh and angry. Settlers were searching near the ridge. They had spotted movement. Amaya froze. But Dakota's hand gently touched her shoulder. Keep moving. Do not stop. Trust the path. They moved quickly, but quietly. Dakota used branches and stones to create small diversions. A rock rolled down the canyon, creating a noise that drew the settlers' attention, while they slipped silently through another path. Amaya marveled at Dakota's ingenuity. He did not fight the settlers with weapons. He outsmarted them. Humans had survived in harsh worlds for thousands of years because of cleverness, not brute force. Hours passed as they navigated the canyon. Amaya's muscles ached, her lungs burned, but she felt stronger than she ever had. She was learning to move with purpose, to think ahead, and to survive in a world that seemed impossible to conquer. At the canyon's end, they found a small ledge overlooking a river of glowing water. The river flowed with a faint green light, reflecting the alien sky above. Dakota knelt and examined the area. We can cross here, he said, but we must be careful. The current is strong and the rocks are slippery. Amaya nodded, her pulse quickening. She remembered the creek they had crossed before. Fear had been replaced by focus. She had learned that humans survived by acting, even when danger seemed overwhelming. She looked at Dakota and realized that he believed in her. That belief made her stronger, more confident. They crossed the river carefully, stepping from stone to stone. Amaya's balance was better now. Her confidence grew with every step. Dakota guided her, pointing out the safest paths and the hidden dangers. They moved like shadows, silent and deliberate. Once across, they entered a dense part of the forest. Dakota stopped suddenly, raising a hand. "Quiet," he whispered. "Do you hear that?" Amaya strained her ears. At first, she heard nothing but the sounds of the forest. Then she realized there was another noise, a soft, mechanical hum, almost like a machine moving through the undergrowth. "They have brought a tracker," Dakota said. "A machine that follows heat and movement. We must be careful. One wrong step, and they will find us." Amaya's heart raced. She had never imagined humans could combine technology with cruelty so effectively. But she remembered Dakota's lessons. Humans survive not by fearing danger, but by thinking ahead and using their brains. Dakota led her along a hidden path, weaving through thick vines and shadowed hollows. The tracker passed them by, unable to detect their careful movements. Amaya marveled at the precision required. Every step, every breath, every choice mattered. She had never felt so alive. As they moved, Dakota taught her more about survival in the wild. "The settlers rely on tools and fear," he said. "We rely on knowledge, observation, and cunning. That is why humans endure. When others fail, we adapt and overcome." Amaya absorbed every word. She practiced using the vines to create traps, to hide footprints, and to make noises that would mislead anyone following them. She felt a new sense of power, the power of human ingenuity. Hours later, they reached a small clearing with a high vantage point. From here, they could see the settlement, the alien forest, and even distant mountains beyond. Dakota stopped and studied the view. "This is where we plan our next move," he said. "We cannot return to the settlement. They will continue searching, but we can prepare, learn, and turn the situation in our favor." Amaya felt a thrill. She was no longer helpless. She had survived, learned, and grown stronger. Humans, she realized, were capable of incredible things when they used their minds, their courage, and their determination. Dakota smiled faintly. "You are ready to take action," he said. "Not just to survive, but to influence the world around you. That is what humans do best. When the odds are against us, we find a way. Amaya nodded, feeling a sense of purpose she had never known. The settlers had tried to destroy her, to silence her, but they had underestimated the human spirit. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, but because they were clever, brave, and resilient. Suddenly, a noise came from below. The settlers were moving again, this time trying to flank the ridge. Takota's eyes narrowed. They are clever, but not clever enough. Watch and learn. He directed Amaya to set simple traps using rocks, vines, and branches. As the settlers advanced, they triggered small diversions, sending some falling back down the slope, while others were misled into dead ends. Amaya felt a surge of excitement. She was not just surviving, she was participating in outsmarting the enemy. Hours passed, and the settlers finally retreated, frustrated and defeated. Takota turned to Amaya. You see? Humans endure, adapt, and triumph, not by force alone, but by intelligence, courage, and foresight. Amaya's chest swelled with pride. She had learned quickly, acted wisely, and survived against overwhelming odds. The human spirit, she realized, was unstoppable when paired with determination and cleverness. As night fell again, they settled into the clearing. The alien stars glittered above, and the soft hum of the forest surrounded them. Dakota handed her a small, glowing fruit from a nearby tree. Eat, rest. Tomorrow we plan our next step. The settlers are not done, but neither are we. Amaya took the fruit, feeling its strange but pleasant taste. She had never felt so alive, so capable, so connected to the world around her. Humans survive, she thought, because they never gave up, because even when surrounded by danger, they adapted. They thought, learned, and acted, and she knew deep in her heart that the story of her survival was only beginning. The settlers would return. The dangers of the alien world were far from over. But Amaya was no longer a helpless girl. She was learning, growing, and becoming a force that could not be ignored. The forest whispered around them, full of life, shadows, and unseen dangers. But Amaya felt no fear. She had courage. She had knowledge. And she had Takota, who believed in her. Together, humans could overcome anything. And the first step toward victory had already begun. The alien forest had grown quiet in the early morning, but Takota and Amaya did not rest. From their vantage point on the high ridge, they could see the settlers below, moving in disorganized patterns. Smoke curled from chimneys and a few small fires flickered. The settlers were angry, frustrated, and determined to find them. We have to act, Takota said, his dark eyes scanning the colony. They think they can control the forest, but humans survive by turning danger into opportunity. That is what we will do. Amaya nodded. Fear was gone, replaced by focus. She had learned to think like Takota, to anticipate, to plan, to use her surroundings. Her hands itched to set traps and mislead the settlers. Look at the paths they take, Takota said, pointing. Predictable. They follow where the ground is easy, where nothing resists them. That is their weakness. Amaya studied the trails. Rocks, uneven ground, hidden streams. The settlers ignored them, walking in straight lines and leaving themselves open. Ah.
We can use that, she whispered. Yes, Takota agreed.
We will create diversions and traps. The forest is alive. Humans can adapt it to their advantage. They descended from the ridge, moving carefully through hidden paths. Amaya's mind raced with ideas. She remembered Takota's lessons. Small actions could have big effects. A displaced rock, a snapped branch, a hidden root. All could mislead and slow their enemies. Humans survived because they noticed the details others ignored. As they neared the settlement, Dakota pointed to a narrow bridge over a rushing stream. "The settlers will cross here. We will use it." Amaya's heart pounded. She had never faced danger so directly, but fear no longer controlled her. She felt sharp, alive, and capable. Humans survived when they acted, and she was ready to act. Dakota showed her how to prepare the bridge. They shifted rocks beneath the wooden planks, creating instability. They used vines to create false footprints leading away from the crossing. Small piles of glowing plants were set along the edges, meant to startle and confuse. Every detail mattered. "They will fall into our plan if we are careful," Dakota said. "Humans are clever when they must be, but even clever humans are predictable when driven by anger." Amaya nodded, understanding. The settlers were angry. That was their weakness. Anger made them careless. Intelligence, patience, and foresight made humans strong. She had learned this in the canyon, in the river, and on the ridge. Now she would apply it. The first settlers arrived at the bridge. Their boots clattered against the wooden planks. One step, then another. Amaya held her breath. The plank beneath the settler creaked, then shifted, sending him stumbling. He shouted, flailing, and his companions stopped, unsure what to do. Dakota whispered, "Watch and learn." Humans survive not by force alone, but by using the environment, by acting with care and intelligence. Amaya felt a surge of pride. She had helped set the traps, adjusted the rocks, and guided the vines. The settlers were confused, misled, slowed by their own recklessness. Every mistake they made was a victory for her and Dakota. The settlers tried to regroup. They shouted orders, waving crude weapons, but Amaya and Dakota were already moving along hidden paths. Ahead of them, another diversion, a false trail of glowing plants, lured a group away from the bridge entirely. The settlers cursed, angry and frustrated, but they could not anticipate the cleverness guiding their prey. Amaya realized something important. Humans survived because they acted, even in impossible situations. They adapted, learned quickly, and used every advantage the world offered. She had been weak and afraid before, but now she understood. Strength was more than muscle. It was intelligence, courage, and adaptability. Hours passed as they led the settlers on a wild chase through the forest. Dakota moved with calm precision. Amaya beside him, correcting small mistakes and creating new diversions. The settlers grew tired, their frustration mounting. They had numbers, but they lacked foresight. They had anger, but they lacked patience. Finally, they reached a narrow canyon with steep walls and twisting vines. Dakota stopped, studying the terrain.
"Here," he said. "We can finish this."
They will not see it coming. Amaya watched as he set a final diversion, a series of loose rocks positioned to roll down the canyon, startling and redirecting the settlers. Hidden vines were prepared to trip anyone who followed too closely. Every detail was designed to confuse, delay, and expose weaknesses. The settlers arrived, unaware of the traps. One stepped on a loose rock and stumbled, yelling in surprise. Another triggered a vine, falling forward onto a soft bed of moss. Chaos spread among them as they realized they were being outsmarted. Amaya's heart raced, but not with fear. She felt exhilaration, pride, and satisfaction. Humans could survive, she thought. Humans could overcome cruelty and anger when they used their minds and courage together. Dakota watched. a faint smile on his face. "See? Intelligence and courage can defeat brute force. That is why humans endure. That is why we survive." Amaya nodded. She had learned more in these days than she had in her entire life in the settlement. Survival was not about hiding nor running. It was about acting, adapting, and thinking. It was about seeing the world, understanding it, and using every opportunity. By nightfall, the settlers retreated, frustrated, tired, and humiliated. They had failed to capture Amaya and Dakota. The forest had become a shield, the traps and diversions, a testimony to human cleverness. Amaya felt a surge of pride. She had not only survived, she had helped triumph. Dakota turned to her. "You have learned quickly," he said. "Courage alone is not enough. Humans survive because we combine courage with intelligence, with observation, with patience. That is why we endure." Amaya smiled. "I understand now," she said. "I am no longer afraid. I am learning to survive, to be strong." "Yes," Dakota said, "and this is only the beginning. Humans can always improve, always adapt, always overcome. That is our strength." They settled for the night in a hidden hollow, safe for now. The forest hummed with life around them, alien and mysterious, but not threatening. Amaya felt alive in a way she never had before. The settlers had tried to destroy her, but they had underestimated her humanity, her courage, her intelligence, and her resilience. She realized the settlers represented fear and cruelty. Dakota represented wisdom, skill, and courage, and she herself represented the potential of humanity to learn, to act, and to survive. Together, they had turned the tables, and the settlers would never see them the same way again. As they rested, Amaya looked toward the horizon. The settlement would continue to search, but now she knew humans could triumph against numbers, cruelty, and anger. It was not just strength that mattered. It was skill, courage, and cleverness. The forest whispered around them, alive with possibilities, and Amaya understood that this was just the beginning of a larger journey. Humans had survived worse than settlers on a hostile world. They had learned, adapted, and endured. And with Dakota's guidance, she would continue to do the same, grow stronger, smarter, and braver with every challenge. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but Amaya felt ready. She was no longer a helpless girl. She had become a clever, courageous human, capable of shaping her own destiny. And that was the greatest power of all.